In the early hours of the morning, when the first pale, silvery light of dawn crept slowly through the narrow, high-set windows of Caligula's palace, the enormous stone halls seemed to exhale a long, silent breath, a subtle, almost imperceptible sigh that spread through the corridors, bouncing softly off polished marble floors and intricate mosaics depicting mythological scenes that covered walls and ceilings, their tiny tesserae catching what little light there was and scattering it in muted reflections across the expansive spaces. The air inside was cool, yet carried a faint residual warmth from the stone slabs that had slowly retained the heat of night fires, mingling with delicate scents of beeswax, oil, and faintly smoked timber, all blending together to create a subtle, calming fragrance that seemed to hover in the stillness, barely noticeable unless one paused for the longest, slowest moments to inhale deeply and deliberately. Outside, the palace gardens were veiled in morning dew, each leaf, shrub, and precisely clipped hedge trembling lightly as a gentle breeze moved through the carefully laid-out grounds. The rustle of foliage and the faint gurgle of stone fountains, creating a soft, repetitive cadence that over time could be felt rather than heard, almost as if the world itself was breathing slowly and methodically. Within the walls, the palace was filled with its own rhythm, a slow, measured pulse determined by the daily movements of servants and attendants, who glided from room to room in long, careful steps, carrying trays of water, folded linens, or oil lamps with quiet, practiced precision, speaking only when absolutely necessary, their voices low, measured, and monotonous, blending seamlessly into the muted hum of the vast, silent palace. Each room, no matter how lavishly adorned, felt austere in its stillness, as if the gilding, marble, and mosaics existed solely to enforce a sense of order and discipline, rather than to bring warmth or ease to those who moved among them. The emperor's private quarters were particularly silent, almost solemn in their emptiness. The massive bed, draped in finely woven textiles, untouched for long stretches of time. Cushions and draperies, arranged with exacting symmetry, and every surface polished until it gleamed softly in the morning light, reflecting shadows and dust motes that drifted lazily through the air. Attendants moved continuously, yet unhurriedly, sweeping floors in long, rhythmic strokes, polishing metal fittings until they glimmered, straightening furniture, adjusting cushions, folding linens, and ensuring that every minute detail of the emperor's surroundings was in perfect, quiet order. Even the kitchens operated in a similarly repetitive, hypnotic fashion. Dough was kneaded in steady, controlled motions, loaves placed carefully into brick ovens to bake slowly, vegetables washed, peeled, and chopped with exacting uniformity, and pulses and grains simmered gently over the fire, filling the air with a faint, comforting aroma that mingled with the other subtle scents of the palace. Herbs were weighed and sorted, oils and spices measured and arranged with meticulous care, and even the smallest motions, the soft scraping of a knife against a chopping board, the faint clink of a ceramic potted to the slow, continuous rhythm of life, a rhythm that was unchanging yet quietly absorbing, drawing attention to each repetition and subtle variation in the daily routine. Courtiers and scribes moved carefully through long, echoing corridors, carrying lists, scrolls, and tablets, recording minor decrees, cataloging events, and copying letters with a painstaking, deliberate pace. Their quiet, controlled gestures, adding to the sense that time itself flowed more slowly within these walls, marked not by excitement or urgency. Occasionally, the emperor's own soft footsteps would resonate through the halls, deliberate and unhurried, a subtle reminder of authority. Yet even this presence did not disturb the prevailing monotony, only emphasizing the careful attention to detail and decorum that governed all activity within the palace. As the morning progressed, sunlight moved across the floors and walls, highlighting the intricate mosaics, polished marble, and gilded surfaces in a sequence of soft, gradual shifts that revealed the slow, silent passage of time. Dust motes suspended in the beams, drifting lazily like tiny, golden specks, dancing in a rhythm imperceptible yet oddly comforting. Meals were prepared with precise care, portions arranged on trays with exacting symmetry. The soft clink of utensils and the faint shuffle of sandals contributing to a muted, continuous soundscape of gentle, repetitive motion. Conversations, when they occurred at all, were subdued, polite, and limited to essential matters: the state of the gardens, the arrangement of furniture, the completion of minor tasks, and the cataloging of mundane events, their monotony contributing to the hypnotic calm of the palace rather than to distraction or excitement. In the scriptorium, scribes slowly ground ink, carefully unrolled papyrus, and copied letters with painstaking precision. The soft scratching of reeds against papyrus, creating a continuous, low hum of sound that blended seamlessly with the faint, rhythmic echo of footsteps, the gentle movement of brooms, and the whisper of silk draperies swaying in the occasional breeze. Hours passed almost imperceptibly in this deliberate monotony, each small, repeated act of sweeping, polishing, arranging, recording, or tending reinforcing the sense that time was slow, steady, and gentle, and that the palace itself existed as a container for this hypnotic rhythm. A place where thought could slow and the mind could settle into a state of calm, reflective observation. By afternoon, the soft light of the sun had shifted further, casting long, delicate shadows across the floors, walls, and gilded columns, creating subtle gradients of color and shade that highlighted the textures of mosaics, tapestries, and carved stone in a manner that was simultaneously intricate and soothing, encouraging careful, almost meditative attention to the smallest details. Servants continued their quiet tasks, polishing, sweeping, arranging, and adjusting, their movements slow, steady, and consistent, creating a continuous, hypnotic backdrop to the fading daylight. And even as the emperor's own presence waned, the palace maintained an environment in which every small action, every subtle sound, every delicate shift of light contributed to a slow, unbroken meditation on the passage of hours. In this way, the palace existed as both a physical structure and a temporal sanctuary, where monotony and order created a hypnotic, almost soporific effect, drawing the inhabitants into a quiet, reflective awareness of repetition, care, and patience. It was a world without urgency, without drama, a realm of deliberate, gentle repetition, where sweeping, polishing, arranging, and recording combined into a soft, continuous rhythm. and where time itself seemed to stretch, slow and settle, as if the very stones, mosaics, and gilded columns had been designed to encourage calm observation, quiet reflection, and the gradual, gentle drift toward rest. In this place, the mundane became meditative, the repetitive became absorbing, and the slow passage of each hour, marked by subtle movements, soft sounds, and gentle light, created a sense of order, predictability, and calm, a tranquil monotony that wrapped around the mind like a soft, warm blanket, carrying it toward a slow, reflective, sleep-inducing state, the hypnotic, silent rhythm of palace life, weaving a gentle, unbroken pattern that stretched seamlessly from the first pale light of dawn to the subtle, fading warmth of afternoon. As the morning light gradually shifted and softened into the warmer tones of mid-morning, the palace of Caligula maintained its slow, deliberate rhythm, each room and corridor resonating with the quiet, repetitive actions of those who inhabited it, from the lowest attendant to the highest-ranking scribe, all moving in careful, measured ways that reinforced the serene monotony that defined life within these walls. In the vast reception halls, sunlight filtered through high windows, illuminating the polished marble floors and gilded columns, casting subtle, shifting patterns of light and shadow across the intricate mosaics that depicted gods, heroes, and legendary battles, scenes frozen in time, yet somehow rendered more distant and subdued by the still, silent atmosphere that pervaded the space. Servants moved along the corridors with a quiet diligence, sweeping dust from the floors in long, methodical strokes, adjusting cushions and draperies with precise attention, and ensuring that every piece of furniture, every decorative object remained exactly in its designated place, for even the slightest misalignment might disrupt the careful, hypnotic order that the palace demanded. The kitchens, which operated with the same slow, relentless precision, filled the halls with faint, comforting aromas, due kneaded with deliberate patience. Loaves placed into brick ovens to bake slowly and evenly, vegetables chopped in uniform, measured pieces, and pulses and grains simmered gently over fires tended with quiet attention, the smoke and warmth mingling softly with the other subtle scents of the palace. Herbs were weighed, sorted, and stored with meticulous care. Oils and spices arranged in neat rows, and every motion, from the soft scraping of a knife against a board to the faint clink of ceramic vessels, contributed to a continuous rhythm that was soothing, repetitive, and absorbing in its consistency. Courtiers, dressed in tunics of muted tones, moved slowly through the echoing halls, carrying tablets, scrolls, and lists, recording minor events, noting the completion of daily tasks, and copying letters with painstaking precision, their quiet, measured movements blending seamlessly into the palace's overall atmosphere of calm, disciplined monotony. Occasionally, the emperor's footsteps could be heard echoing softly along distant corridors, slow and deliberate, a presence that added a subtle weight to the silence without introducing urgency or excitement, reminding those within of the overarching authority that governed every detail, yet never disturbing the steady rhythm of ordinary life. In smaller chambers, scribes worked in the muted light of oil lamps or sunlight filtering through narrow windows, grinding ink slowly. unrolling papyrus with exacting care, and writing letters in precise, even strokes. Their attention focused entirely on the meticulous repetition of the task at hand. The scratching of reed pens against papyrus, providing a gentle, continuous accompaniment to the soft shuffle of footsteps and the quiet rustle of fabric throughout the halls. Outside, the palace gardens offered a similarly hypnotic scene, with trimmed hedges, stone pathways, fountains, and carefully arranged flower beds, all maintained in an exacting symmetry, attended by gardeners who moved slowly, deliberately, and methodically, clipping branches, arranging plants, and tending to the soil in a pattern that seemed designed to echo the rhythm of the palace itself. The faint rustle of leaves and the soft trickle of water added to the ambient, continuous soundscape, a subtle reminder of life beyond the stone walls, yet one that remained subdued, rhythmic, and entirely consonant with the palace's slow-moving, immersive monotony. Meals were prepared and served with ritualized precision, each tray, plate, and bowl arranged exactly, each portion measured, and each movement of a servant designed to maintain balance and order. The sounds of soft footsteps, faint scraping, and gentle clinking of utensils blending into the palace's ongoing, hypnotic symphony of repetition. Even the simplest conversations were conducted in hushed, polite tones, usually focused on practical matters such as the arrangement of rooms, the condition of linens, the schedule of duties, or the organization of scrolls, their subdued monotony contributing to the pervasive calm rather than interrupting it. Time within the palace moved as if in slow motion, each day nearly indistinguishable from the last. The hours marked not by excitement or novelty, but by the gentle, deliberate repetition of small, carefully attended tasks, the quiet observation of patterns, and the steady, unbroken flow of ordinary duties, when observed carefully, became absorbing, meditative, and hypnotic. Afternoon light shifted across the halls, casting long shadows that lengthened and stretched over mosaics, polished floors, and gilded columns, revealing textures and subtle details that might otherwise go unnoticed, a gentle reminder of the unhurried passage of time. Servants continued their meticulous tasks, moving with steady, rhythmic precision, sweeping, polishing, arranging, and monitoring, while the occasional gentle shuffle of sandals, the soft whisper of fabric, and the muted sound of water from fountains combined to create a continuous, soothing backdrop, a slow, persistent reminder of the palace's quiet, ordered life. In private chambers, the emperor's attendants attended to minor adjustments, folding textiles, arranging cushions, straightening furniture, and inspecting the smallest details, their repetitive actions, a soft, continuous echo of the broader rhythm that governed the palace. Even as the late afternoon approached, the sun cast warmer, richer hues across walls, floors, and gilded surfaces, shadows lengthening and blending with the soft textures of tapestries, columns, and polished marble, creating a subtle, hypnotic play of light and dark that seemed to mirror the gentle, unbroken rhythm of daily life within the palace. Outside, the gardens, fountains, and walkways were similarly bathed in soft light. The leaves of trees and plants glimmering gently, the fountain's waters rippling with slow, predictable patterns, the wind moving subtly through branches and hedges, creating a faint, soothing rustle that blended with the muted sounds of palace activity. In this way, every element, the movements of servants, the careful writing of scribes, the rhythmic preparation of meals, the meticulous care of the gardens, the soft echo of footsteps, and the shifting patterns of light and shadow worked together to create a continuous, immersive rhythm, a serene monotony that encouraged reflection, patience, and a gentle, sleep-inducing calm. By evening, the palace seemed to fold upon itself. Fading light, the vast halls quieted, the servants' movements slowing, and the steady rhythm of polishing, arranging, and tending giving way to the softer, more subdued tasks of closing windows, extinguishing lamps, and securing chambers for the night. The calm, ordered monotony of the day persisted in memory and environment, a gentle, hypnotic presence that lingered even as the sun disappeared beyond the horizon, leaving the palace steeped in soft shadow, silence, and the quiet assurance of routine. Within this vast, opulent, yet austere space, time seemed to flow slowly and gently, marked by the repetitive, deliberate actions of those who maintained the palace, by the soft, measured rhythms of footsteps, brushes, and the gentle shifting of light, and by the quiet, continuous awareness of the meticulous care that defined each day. Life within Caligula's palace, though extravagant in its appearance, was hypnotically monotonous, each moment absorbed into the next in a slow, unbroken sequence of small, deliberate acts, a continuous rhythm of repetition and attention that encouraged reflection, patience, and, for those who observed carefully, the gradual, gentle drift toward calm, restorative sleep. As the afternoon in Caligula's palace deepened into the soft, golden hours of late afternoon, the entire complex seemed to settle into a steady, measured rhythm, a gentle cadence that mirrored the careful repetition of countless small tasks carried out by the attendants, scribes, and courtiers who moved slowly through the echoing halls, each step, gesture, and motion executed with deliberate care and meticulous attention, ensuring that every object, surface, and detail remained exactly as it should, unchanging, orderly, and calm. The light shifted gradually, bathing the marble floors, gilded columns, and mosaics in a warm, honeyed glow, highlighting textures that might otherwise have gone unnoticed. The faint ridges of carved stone, the tiny variations in tesserae of the mosaics, the soft gleam of polished metals, and the subtle patterns in woven textiles, all contributing to a visual rhythm that complemented the quiet movements of palace life. In the long corridors, servants continued their slow, precise work, sweeping floors in repeated strokes, polishing metal fittings until they reflected the light softly, adjusting cushions and draperies, folding linens with meticulous symmetry, and carrying trays of water, oil, or prepared food from one chamber to another, their movements rhythmic, predictable, and hypnotically steady, each repetition reinforcing the calm monotony of the day. Even in the kitchens, the atmosphere was one of slow, deliberate diligence. Dough was kneaded with measured care, loaves placed into ovens to bake evenly, vegetables prepared in precise, uniform portions, pulses and grains simmered gently over controlled heat, and the subtle sense of these preparations, warm bread, boiled grains, herbs, and oils mingled softly with the faint smoke of the hearth and the residual sense of beeswax and polish from the surrounding halls, creating a gentle olfactory backdrop that reinforced the hypnotic cadence of palace life. Courtiers moved through the halls with scrolls, lists, and tablets, recording minor decrees, cataloging events, and copying letters with painstaking precision. Their gestures slow, careful, and almost mechanical, yet somehow absorbing in their blending seamlessly into the overall rhythm of the palace, where even the smallest action contributed to the unbroken sequence of repetition and order. Occasionally, the emperor's slow footsteps could be heard echoing in distant corridors, deliberate even, and measured, a presence that imposed subtle attention without disrupting the calm monotony, a quiet reminder of authority and the continuous requirement for vigilance, yet one that maintained rather than interrupted the gentle flow of daily routines. In the scriptorium, scribes continued their work under the soft, shifting light, grinding ink carefully, unrolling papyrus with exacting care, and writing letters with methodical precision, their movements steady and rhythmic, each stroke of the pen, each carefully aligned line contributing to a soft, continuous symphony of minor sound that echoed faintly through the silent palace halls. Outside, the gardens were maintained with equal care, trimmed hedges, precisely arranged flower beds, stone pathways, and fountains attended by gardeners, moving slowly, deliberately, and in repeated patterns. The rustle of leaves and soft trickle of water providing a subtle, soothing rhythm that complemented the quiet monotony indoors. Meals in the late afternoon were prepared and served with ritualized precision, portions arranged carefully. Trays moved along corridors in slow, steady motion. Utensils and ceramics handled gently, and soft clinks and whispers blending into a continuous, unobtrusive soundscape that further enhanced the hypnotic environment of palace life. Conversations, when they occurred, were soft, restrained, and polite, almost entirely focused on administrative details, the condition of rooms, furniture, or gardens, and the scheduling of daily routines, their subdued monotony harmonizing with the surrounding movements rather than drawing attention or creating urgency. The afternoon slowly gave way to early evening, and the light softened further, creating longer shadows that stretched across the polished floors, gilded columns, and mosaics, producing subtle gradients and textures that encouraged careful observation and reflective attention, a visual rhythm that perfectly complemented the slow cadence of daily tasks. Servants continued with gentle diligence, arranging and adjusting, polishing and folding, moving through the echoing corridors and chambers with steady, measured precision, while the occasional soft sound of fabric, footsteps, or water provided an unbroken, continuous accompaniment to the unfolding, monotonous rhythm. In the smaller, private chambers, attendants attended to minor adjustments, folding textiles, straightening cushions, arranging furniture, and inspecting surfaces with methodical care. Their repetitive actions, a microcosm of the broader pattern that defined life in the palace. Each small gesture reinforcing the sense of calm, predictability, and hypnotic order. Even as evening approached and sunlight faded, the palace maintained a gentle, unbroken rhythm. The continuous interplay of sound, movement, and light, forming a soft, almost soporific symphony that encouraged reflection, patience, and a subtle, hypnotic awareness of the slow passage of hours. By late evening, the ambient light had dimmed, casting soft, muted shadows across the halls, floors, and columns, creating a tranquil, almost contemplative atmosphere that invited attention to the small, precise details of the surrounding architecture, furnishings, and decorations, each detail emphasized by the gentle, consistent rhythm of repeated tasks. Outside, the gardens grew shadowed and hushed, the fountains still trickling gently, the leaves rustling softly in the subtle evening breeze, and the stone paths catching the fading light, reinforcing the hypnotic stillness that enveloped the entire complex. Within this ordered, repetitive world, each person moved in careful accordance with the palace's rhythm, sweeping, polishing, arranging, cataloging, preparing, recording, and adjusting, each act blending seamlessly into the next, creating a continuous, absorbing, sleep-inducing pattern that dominated every corner of the palace. In this way, time itself seemed to slow, expanding gently into long, continuous stretches defined by repetition and meticulous attention. The quiet, steady cadence of life in the palace, fostering an almost meditative awareness of small, deliberate acts, the soft passage of light, the gentle echoes of movement, and the hypnotic, unbroken flow of daily life. Here, in the vast, opulent, yet emotionally austere environment of Caligula's palace, monotony was transformed into a gentle, absorbing rhythm, each moment dissolving seamlessly into the next, and the subtle, continuous interplay of light, shadow, sound, and movement encouraged the mind to settle, reflect, and drift gently toward a slow, reflective, and sleep-inducing calm that stretched from the fading afternoon through the gentle quiet of early evening. As the late evening settled over Caligula's palace, the golden warmth of the afternoon light gradually faded into the softer, muted tones of twilight, casting long, gentle shadows across the polished marble floors, gilded columns, and mosaics that decorated every wall and hallway, each subtle shift in light creating a visual rhythm that complemented the slow, deliberate pace of life within the palace. The air was cooler now, carrying faint traces of beeswax, burning oil, and the lingering aromas of meals that had been carefully prepared and consumed earlier in the day, mingling with the distant scent of gardens beyond the walls, where dew had begun to settle on leaves and flower petals, each droplet catching the dimming light in soft, reflective glimmers. The palace itself seemed to exhale a slow, measured breath, a calm, almost imperceptible pulse that resonated through the halls, corridors, and chambers, as if the building itself were aware of the deliberate monotony that structured the lives of those within, and participated in the hypnotic rhythm of daily existence. Servants moved quietly, their motions slow, measured, and deliberate, sweeping floors in long, repeated strokes, polishing metal fittings until they glimmered softly, adjusting cushions and draperies, folding linens with exacting care, and carrying trays or small items with gentle, unhurried precision. All actions performed with the same careful attention that had defined their routines throughout the day. In the kitchens, the staff continued their methodical work, though the pace had softened. Loaves of bread, cooled slowly on wooden racks. Herbs were sorted into neat bundles. Vegetables arranged with precision, and the soft, comforting scent of simmering grains lingered in the air, blending with the faint traces of previously baked bread and roasted pulses, creating a subtle, soothing, olfactory backdrop that contributed to the overall rhythm of the palace. Courtiers and scribes moved through the halls with scrolls, lists, and tablets, recording minor details, cataloging events, and copying letters with meticulous precision, their hands and eyes moving with careful deliberation, their soft voices almost imperceptible as they whispered in polite, restrained tones, discussing administrative matters, room arrangements, and schedules in a manner that preserved the tranquil monotony rather than introducing energy or disruption. Occasionally, the emperor's footsteps could be heard echoing softly along distant corridors, measured and deliberate, adding a gentle weight to the silence without disturbing it, a subtle reminder of authority that reinforced the structured, hypnotic rhythm rather than interrupting it. In the scriptorium, the soft scratch of reed pens against papyrus continued. The careful grinding of ink, the unrolling of papyrus, and the precise copying of letters, creating a faint, continuous, and almost musical backdrop to the hushed, repetitive activity that pervaded the palace. Outside, the gardens had become quieter. The fountains trickling gently, leaves rustling faintly in the evening breeze, and shadows stretching across stone pathways and flower beds, each element contributing to the subdued, hypnotic pattern of palace life. Servants continued their work in the fading light, folding textiles, arranging cushions, polishing surfaces, and inspecting objects with meticulous care, each repetition reinforcing the pervasive sense of calm, order, and quiet continuity that defined existence within these walls. Meals were cleared, and trays returned with the same ritualized precision as they had been served. The faint sounds of soft footsteps, sliding plates, and whispered instructions forming part of the palace's continuous auditory rhythm, a soundscape that was gentle, repetitive, and absorbing, lulling the mind toward calm reflection and gentle fatigue. Conversations, when they occurred, were muted and restrained, usually concerning minor observations about room arrangements, the condition of the gardens, the status of written records, or the completion of daily tasks, their monotonous, measured nature reinforcing the pervasive quietude rather than interrupting it. As twilight deepened, the soft glow of oil lamps began to illuminate the corridors and chambers, flickering gently against the polished marble floors, gilded columns, and mosaics. The dim light shifting and dancing slowly, creating a subtle, hypnotic play of shadow and illumination that mirrored the slow, repetitive motions of the servants, scribes, and courtiers, each action blending seamlessly into the next. The ambient sounds of the palace, the soft sweep of brooms, the gentle clink of utensils, the faint rustle of textiles, and the quiet trickle of water from fountains created a continuous, unbroken rhythm, a slow, deliberate cadence that could absorb the attention, encourage reflection, and foster a sense of tranquil monotony, ideal for the gradual drifting of thought toward rest and contemplation. Even as the evening deepened into night, the palace maintained its ordered pace, the careful repetition of small acts of maintenance, cleaning, and adjustment reinforcing the hypnotic calm while the faint echoes of movement, subtle shifts of light, and gentle interplay of textures provided a continuous, soothing, sensory environment. In private chambers, attendants performed the final checks of the day, folding textiles neatly, adjusting cushions, polishing small surfaces, and ensuring that every object remained in exact order. Each repetitive act forming part of the unbroken, absorbing rhythm of palace life. Each small gesture contributing to the pervasive calm and hypnotic monotony that enveloped the building. Outside, the gardens had quieted completely, the fountain's gentle trickle blending with the subtle rustle of leaves in the evening breeze, shadows stretching across stone paths, flower beds, and trimmed hedges, a visual echo of the careful, rhythmic motions of those within the palace. By the time the final tasks of the evening were completed, the palace was bathed in soft, shadowed darkness, the flickering light of remaining oil lamps casting gentle illumination across marble floors, gilded columns, and mosaics, creating an atmosphere of tranquil monotony, repetition, and meticulous care. A space where each detail, each movement, each sound contributed to a continuous, hypnotic rhythm. In this vast, opulent, and emotionally austere environment, the gentle repetition of small acts, the slow passage of light, the measured rhythm of footsteps and soft movements, and the continuous, unbroken sequence of attention to detail combined to create a pervasive sense of calm, order, and hypnotic monotony. Time seemed to expand, flowing slowly and gently, marked by the delicate interplay of shadow, light, sound, and movement, and the repetitive, deliberate patterns of daily life encouraged reflection, patience, and a subtle, almost imperceptible drift toward sleep. Here, in the quiet, ordered spaces of Caligula's palace, the mundane became meditative, the repetitive became absorbing, and the soft, continuous rhythm of carefully executed tasks, whispered instructions, shifting light, and measured footsteps created a gentle, sleep-inducing environment in which the mind could settle, relax, and float effortlessly toward rest. As night deepened over Caligula's palace, the world outside quieted further, and within the immense stone walls, the palace itself seemed to settle into a hushed, steady rhythm. A rhythm created not by excitement or activity, but by the gentle, continuous repetition of small, deliberate tasks carried out by servants, scribes, and attendants, each movement slow, measured, and precise, contributing to the pervasive atmosphere of calm, monotony, and hypnotic order. The corridors were dimly illuminated by the soft glow of oil lamps placed at intervals along polished floors, their flickering light casting gentle, dancing shadows across gilded columns, mosaics, and tapestries, and creating a subtle, continuous pattern that the eyes could follow almost unconsciously, drawing attention not to dramatic movement but to the quiet passage of light. Servants moved carefully, almost silently, sweeping floors in long, rhythmic strokes, polishing metals until they glimmered softly, adjusting cushions and draperies, folding linens with meticulous care, and carrying trays or small items with steady, unhurried precision. Each act performed with exacting repetition that reinforced the hypnotic stillness of the palace. In the kitchens, the preparation of the next day's meals had begun in a slow, deliberate fashion. Bread dough was measured, portioned, and left to rest herbs weighed and sorted for future use, vegetables cleaned and stored with careful attention, and pulses and grains set aside in neat containers. The faint aromas of dried herbs and lingering smoke blending with the soft warmth of residual hearth fires, creating a subtle olfactory rhythm that complemented the gentle cadence of movement throughout the halls. Courtiers and scribes moved through corridors with lists, scrolls, and tablets, recording minor events, cataloging details, and copying letters with painstaking care. Their soft, subdued voices, almost imperceptible, discussing minor arrangements of rooms, schedules of duties, or the organization of documents in measured, monotonous tones that added to the palace's overall quiet, hypnotic soundscape. Occasionally, the measured echo of the emperor's footsteps could be heard in distant halls, slow, deliberate, and even a subtle reminder of authority, a weight that imposed attention without disrupting the pervasive calm or the monotonous, unhurried rhythm of activity that defined the palace. In the scriptorium, the faint scratch of pens against papyrus continued, the slow grinding of ink, the careful unrolling of sheets, and the methodical copying of letters forming a low, continuous hum that blended seamlessly with the soft rustle of fabric, gentle shuffles of sandals, and faint clinking of utensils from the kitchens, creating an immersive auditory environment, subtle yet absorbing, where time seemed to stretch, slow and flow continuously. Outside, the palace gardens had fallen into deep quiet, the fountain's gentle trickle and the soft movement of leaves in the night breeze forming a delicate, rhythmic backdrop, shadows stretching across stone paths, flower beds, and trimmed hedges, reflecting the careful, repetitive motions of those working within the palace walls. Servants completed final adjustments for the night, folding textiles, arranging cushions, polishing small surfaces, and inspecting every detail with meticulous care, their actions echoing the same hypnotic rhythm that had permeated each day, each repetition reinforcing the pervasive calm, quiet order, and gentle monotony of palace life. Meals and trays had been cleared, and the final tasks of the day involved minimal sound, soft footfalls, subtle shifting of objects, and the occasional whisper, all part of a continuous, absorbing, repetitive cadence that invited reflection, observation, and the gradual settling of thought into a calm, hypnotic state. In private chambers, attendants ensured that all items were in their precise locations, the smallest details attended to with deliberate care, each repetitive action forming part of the broader, unbroken rhythm of the palace, each motion reinforcing the hypnotic continuity that allowed the inhabitants to feel the gentle, almost imperceptible passage of time. The flickering oil lamps illuminated mosaics and tapestries, casting, shifting, soft patterns of light and shadow that moved slowly across walls and floors, inviting the eyes to follow gentle, predictable paths and providing a visual accompaniment to the quiet, measured movements that filled the space. Even as night deepened, the palace's slow, absorbing rhythm persisted, the continuous interplay of movement, light, sound, and shadow, creating an immersive, hypnotic atmosphere, a calm, reflective monotony that encouraged attention to small details, deliberate observation, and the gradual drifting of consciousness toward rest. The air held a faint coolness, mingled with the residual warmth of the stone floors and hearths, a gentle contrast that encouraged a slow, reflective awareness of the body and the surrounding environment, each inhalation and exhalation aligning subtly with the soft, repetitive patterns of palace life. Outside, the night deepened further. Stars faintly visible beyond the palace walls, the gardens quiet and subdued, the fountains still trickling in rhythmic, gentle patterns. Leaves rustling softly in a delicate evening breeze, all contributing to a continuous sensory environment that mirrored the monotony, order, and hypnotic calm within the palace itself. By the late hours, the palace had become a sanctuary of repetition, subtle movement, and quiet, absorbing attention, where the mundane became meditative, and the steady, deliberate cadence of sweeping, polishing, arranging, writing, and observing created a pervasive rhythm, soothing the mind and body, fostering reflection, patience, and a slow, gentle drift toward sleep. Within this vast, opulent, yet emotionally austere environment, each small act, each sound, each shift of light or shadow contributed to a continuous, unbroken sequence of hypnotic monotony, a rhythm in which time seemed to stretch, flow gently, and settle, drawing all those within reflective awareness of the passing hours and the serene, repetitive beauty of carefully maintained order. In this way, the palace of Caligula existed not for excitement, drama, or change, but as a vessel of deliberate repetition, subtle rhythms, and gentle monotony, a world in which the slow passage of hours, the continuous interplay of light and shadow, the measured movements of attendants, scribes, and courtiers, and the soft, ambient sounds of daily activity created an immersive, hypnotic environment, a place where the mind could rest, drift, and sink gradually into sleep, carried by the gentle, unbroken cadence of life within these vast, silent, and meticulously ordered walls. As the quiet night stretched on within Caligula's palace, a profound stillness seemed to settle over the vast stone halls, a stillness punctuated only by the soft, measured movements of the few attendants who remained awake to maintain the order and perfection demanded by the emperor and the palace itself. The oil lamps flickered gently, casting long, wavering shadows that stretched slowly across marble floors, gilded columns, and intricate mosaics, creating subtle, shifting patterns of light and dark that the eyes could follow in a trance-like fashion, inviting careful, reflective attention without demanding it. In the corridors, servants moved with deliberate, unhurried steps, sweeping floors in long, rhythmic strokes, polishing metal fittings until they glimmered softly in the flickering light, adjusting cushions and draperies, folding linens with exacting care, and carrying small items from one chamber to another, their movements seamless, slow, and hypnotically repetitive, a continuous echo of the palace's overall rhythm. In the kitchens, a few attendants continued their quiet tasks, preparing ingredients for the next day's meals in the same meticulous, methodical way as they had during the day. Herbs weighed and sorted, vegetables cleaned and stored, grains arranged in neat containers, and dough portioned and left to rest. The faint aromas mingling with residual smoke and the subtle warmth of the stone floors, forming a soft, calming olfactory pattern that complemented the visual and auditory rhythm of the palace. Courtiers and scribes moved with equal care, carrying scrolls, lists, and tablets, copying letters and cataloging minor details with painstaking precision. Their soft whispers and the faint scratching of reed pens against papyrus forming a gentle, continuous, almost musical accompaniment to the slow cadence of movement throughout the halls. Occasionally, the measured echo of the emperor's footsteps could be heard along distant corridors. Slow, deliberate, and even, a subtle reminder of authority that maintained attention and order without introducing tension or excitement. A quiet presence that merged seamlessly into the palace's hypnotic monotony. The scriptorium continued to hum softly with the careful, deliberate actions of scribes grinding ink, unrolling papyrus, and writing letters in slow, precise strokes, their concentration absolute, their movements deliberate, each line of text a microcosm of the continuous, absorbing repetition that defined the entire palace. Outside, the gardens lay in deep shadow, the fountains still trickling gently, leaves moving subtly in the night breeze, shadows stretching across pathways, hedges and flower beds creating a visual pattern of slow, deliberate movement that mirrored the calm, unhurried rhythm indoors. Servants performed final meticulous checks in the private chambers, folding textiles neatly, adjusting cushions, polishing small surfaces, and ensuring that every object remained in perfect order. Each action repeated with hypnotic precision, reinforcing the pervasive calm and continuous absorbing monotony of palace life. Even the softest sounds, the gentle rustle of fabric, the subtle clink of ceramic formed part of an unbroken rhythm, a slow, measured cadence that invited observation, reflection, and the gradual drift of thought toward calmness and rest. As the night deepened further, the flickering oil lamps cast long, dancing shadows across polished floors, gilded columns, and mosaics. The subtle movement of light and shadow creating a hypnotic visual pattern that complemented the continuous, repetitive movements of those maintaining the palace. The interplay of light and darkness, of gentle sound and soft movement, encouraged the mind to slow, to notice small details, to reflect on repetitive tasks, and to gradually dissolve into the ambient rhythm of life within these vast, ordered walls. The air was cool, carrying faint scents of polished stone, beeswax, smoke, and the lingering aroma of prepared food, a subtle combination that seemed almost imperceptibly to align with the visual and auditory rhythm of the palace, producing a calming, soporific effect on those who lingered in its quiet spaces. The gardens, too, contributed to this hypnotic environment, with the fountain's waters flowing in slow, continuous patterns, the leaves of trees and shrubs shifting gently in a light breeze, and shadows stretching long and uninterrupted over paths and flower beds, a slow, absorbing repetition that mirrored the careful, deliberate movements indoors. In private chambers, attendants moved with quiet diligence, attending to the smallest details, folding linens, adjusting cushions, polishing furniture, and inspecting the placement of objects, each action repeated with precise care, each gesture adding to the hypnotic, continuous cadence of palace life. Even as midnight approached, the palace maintained its unbroken rhythm, the gentle repetition of small acts, the subtle interplay of light and shadow, and the quiet, measured sounds of movement, writing, and water, creating a pervasive, immersive environment. One that encouraged reflective awareness and a slow, gentle drift toward sleep. Within this vast, opulent, and emotionally austere setting, monotony became meditative, repetition became absorbing, and the continuous, deliberate cadence of life sweeping, polishing, arranging, writing, and observing wove together into a soft, continuous rhythm, a rhythm that guided the mind toward calm, restorative rest. Time seemed to slow, stretching gently across hours filled with the subtle, methodical repetition of carefully attended tasks. The hypnotic interplay of light, shadow, and sound, and the continuous, unbroken awareness of precise, deliberate care in every detail. Here, in the quiet, shadowed, and meticulously maintained spaces of Caligula's palace, the vastness, opulence, and silent order combined to create an environment that was immersive, monotonous, and deeply absorbing, a place where consciousness could settle, thoughts could drift, and the gentle, unbroken cadence of life could carry every observer gradually toward rest and sleep, guided by the soft, continuous rhythms that defined every aspect of daily existence.